is the part one of a long shir on Mitzraim. I'd like to focus. There's multitudes of things to focus on. I focus first of all on the psukim, which deal with the concept of Sipur, as explained specifically in the Haggadah. The Haggadah has the Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah. We know that Lamaisa is a Mechilta. It's a Mechilta in Pashas Bay. Mechilta to Rabbi Yishmael. I'd like to read the psukim for themselves before I look at the Mechilta. Then try to understand what the Mechilta is doing, if you don't mind. So here, if you have your source sheets in front of you, go to source Vav. Source Vav is the pasuk in Shmais Peik Yud Beis, pasuk Chavav. It's talking about the Hakrovus HaKorban, which is actually done on Yud Daled in Nisan. And the pasuk says, Vaya, the pasuk says, excuse me, here it is, I'm just finding it. Vaya ki savo, time will come past when you will come to the land, Asher yiten Hashem lachem, which God will give you, kasher diber, as he had so said, ushmartem es ha'avodah hazos, and you should heed this avodah, this is the avodah, the shchitas hakorban. That's what this pasuk was before about the halacha mishkul chulchem tzayin ushmartem es ha'avodah hazos. The pasuk says, "Vaya ki yomru aleichem bneichem mo ha'avodah hazos lachem." The time will come past when your children will say to you, "What is this service for you?" And you will say to them, "Zevach Pesachu LaHashem." It is a sacrifice of skipping for God. Asher Pasacha Batei Bnei Yisrael, that God had skipped over the households of the Israelites from Mitzraim. B'nakfayas Mitzrayim, when he had afflicted the Egyptians, Vesbatenu Itzil, he had saved our houses. And the nation bowed and prostrated itself. And they went and they did the Korban Pesach in Mitzrayim. This is the psukim that we're talking about. Now, when you analyze the psukim, the first thing which hits you is, we all know that the verb for asking is yish'al. Making a statement is yomar. Now, why in God's earth does it say here that the child will not ask, but rather say, Ma avodah hazos lachem? Obviously, when you read this, you understand that this is a case where man is not really asking, but he's rather making a rhetorical statement. When's the last time you made a statement rhetorically by asking a question? You did not want an answer. You were basically saying a fact. You were challenging a reality. I will sometimes ask a Moshe, is this really pshat in the Gemara? It's a nice way of saying it isn't. When I challenge somebody, I do that. I state a statement in a rhetorical question. This is not, it's a challenge. That's what this really is. It's obviously because of that Chazal understood we're talking about the Ben Rasha. Talking about the Ben Rasha, that he basically is not asking but challenging. Actually, what the Ritva writes in his Chidushim on the Haggadah Shel Pesach, as printed in the Chidushah Ritva Amsachim, Moshe Rav Kook, he points this out, but I think it's quite evident on its own that the Chiddush here is not from the words lachem, eschem, etc., but rather from the words yomru. The words yomru lachem dechem. Your children will say to you. So you must read this ma avodah hazos lachem not as a question, but as a cynical challenge, like they say, "What is this, Dad?" Something like that. That's what we're looking at. Okay. Now it's interesting. So this is the child, and when does he ask this question? Well, if you look carefully, the pasuk before does not describe the mitzvah of achila. Here we're talking about the halacha of the shechita and the agudas esav, etc. We're talking about a question which is asked on Yud Daled Nisan. ultimately, logically, this pasuk would have nothing to do with the night of Pesach, the mitzvah of Leil Pesach, which is the night of Tesvav Nisan, but rather it's a question which a cynical child asks on the 14th day of Nisan. And he challenges the father, what are you doing here? To them. And there's an interesting, what does the Torah say? What does he describe? What is the prescribed answer? Well, the prescribed answer is actually, I want you to know, my child, Zevach Pesach Hu Hashem. It is a sacrifice of skipping. Now, let me explain what that means. We thank God that he skipped over the houses of the Israelites while he was literally killing the children of the Egyptians, and he saved us. Now, inferred in that answer is that God had to do something out of order. The order would have been that he should have killed the Jews too. Yet he skipped over them and saved us. Saved us means to say, normally, if not for that ness of Pesach, he would have come in and it would have struck us in the house too. This is not what the pasuk says. Rishonim explain, Midrashim explain, that why couldn't we walk out to the house? Because as soon as the Baal Chamavis runs around town, obviously he'll kill whoever's outside. Yes, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're walking outside of your quarantine. Actually sounds very contemporary. That's very nice for being outside, but we're inside already. Yet inside too, we need a special ness of Hatzalah of Pesach, as Botenu Hitzil, implying that in all truth, as soon as the Makas Pcheres was unleashed, there was no reason the Jews should not be included in it. One has to try to understand why that is true. But it's clearly inferred in the pasuk. Yes, that under normal circumstances, Makas Pcheres should have been for not if it was to be. There was no reason to differentiate between the Jews and the Egyptians. And there's a certain ness, a certain gratitude we have to God. He skipped over our houses. As Botenu Hitzil, he saved our houses. This is not a concept, as mentioned before. This seems to say that we were in dire straits. It refers to the spiritual situation the Jews were in Egypt at the time. And we're obviously going to have to discuss this, but in a nutshell, let's understand. I would say in total opposite of the pictures my grandchildren bring from kindergarten, that we have these bald Egyptian taskmasters whipping these Jews with beards and tzitzis. I don't understand how my grandchild brought back a picture of a kid in Egypt with tzitzis, but whatever it be, it sounded they were all nice, observant Jews when we know the truth is not that way at all. Just in a nutshell, one opens up Rambam, Hilchas Avodah Zarah, Perek Aleph. One knows that except for Shevet Levi, all the Jews were Ovdei Avodah Zarah, all of them were pagans. As simple as that. They were all pagans. Rambam writes that if God wouldn't have taken us out of Egypt, the whole monotheistic revolution that Avraham Avinu had created and developed would have totally been uprooted and would have been left into the dust of the highway of history. It would have been a footnote somewhere. And the world would have reverted back to paganism, literally what the Rambam writes. It was only Shevet Levi, a very, very, very small percent of the nation. I think it's 9.6 of the people that left, the percent of the people that left Egypt. But the people that left Egypt were only 20% of the people. 80% of the Jews were not even redeemable. They died in Makas Chayshich. So you can imagine the minute percent of the Levium were the only people which were not Ovdei Avodah Zarah. As the Malachim said at Kriyas Yamsuf, when God saved the Jews and drowned the Egyptians, the Malachim said, Halala Ovdei Avodah Zarah, Halala Ovdei Avodah Zarah. They're all Ovdei Avodah Zarah. Why are you favoring one group over the other? So obviously this was the situation at the time. We were totally assimilated. We were pagan. We went to the same church. We had nothing. We had no Torah anyway. We did not keep Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. We were Ovdei Avodah Zarah. I guess the only thing we did, we had some ethnic identity. We different midrashim, what they kept. Somehow the world likes to say three things. There's actually different midrashim. There's not one medrash that says all the three things of Shmam, Levushim, and Lashonim. It's a mix of different midrashim. There are other things there too. Whatever it be, they kept ethnic identity. They had kosher-style knishes and called themselves Goldberg or something like that. That's about it. That's all they actually had, and that made them redeemable. So it was this is what God, I tell our children, we were in bad straits. And it was really once God unleashed the Midas Hadin, there was no logical reason why we would be saved, and yet God saved us. He skipped over our houses and he saved us. You know what? Forget religion. Say thank you. What we're telling the child, you know what? You may believe in different gods. You may be a pagan. Who is this child? The Mitzvah writes this child is a child which was born in Egypt. He also was a pagan. This is the child which is supposed to be asking him. He was born in Egypt, grew in paganism, and he also was taken out of Egypt. He's here now. That's what the Ritva writes. That's the pasuk. The pasuk, the child is here. Just you know what? He still can't get over the Avodah Zorah of Aries, which is the constellation Aries of the sheep, or whether it be the sun god of Ra. That's the God he chooses to worship. He's not interested in worshiping this monotheistic entity called Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei. This is the boy, and we tell him, I don't care if you want to worship Ra and you want to worship Aries, but you got to show gratitude to the God of the Hebrews because he saved your skin. You're out of there and alive because of that. That's the answer that we give to this child that we call the Russia in the Mikra. We say this is not a theological issue. It's a question of Akar Satayt. It's a question of being a mensch. It's a question of having gratitude for its greatest, for salvation. The times of Avodah Zarah, if we can pinpoint what happened at that stage, we realize that many people worship different deities. Usually a conquered nation would accept the gods of the conqueror, the victorious army, plus keeping it to the pantheon of their own. They didn't walk away from theirs, but they simply accepted others too. The problem was not that, they didn't even know Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, but the truth of the matter is he didn't mind. It wasn't his issue. I had no reason to serve this God. I'm used to serving my own. The sheep, son, etc. And we tell them, right, be thankful to that one. That's actually the Pshuto Shemikra of the pasuk. Now you look at that and you look at what the Agada says. It would seem to be a totally different story, and we have to understand what the Agada is doing. The Mechilta puts this child as saying the same thing, and what do we answer him? If you look in the Agada, you have it in your source Yud Beis. And we suddenly add something lachem v'loy loy. This could be interesting. Kofar be'ikr means usually that he denies the principal idea of God. That's not true. The child walking out of Egypt was not a heretic. He was a pagan. There was no kfira be'ikr until Bayis Sheni. Rama writes at the beginning of Hilchas Avodas Yom Kippurim, be made Bayis Sheni tzotza haminus. The idea of kfira, denying the principle of reality that there is a creator, God, etc., is something totally a product of the Greek school. It has nothing to do with the Avodah Zarah. It has something totally different. Obviously, it's interesting. He brings you an idea of Kafa Be'ikah, and wonders, is he talking about the Russia of the Mikra, or is he talking about the contemporary Russia at the times of the Mechilta Rabbi Yishmael, which is by Sheni? Well, let's look a little further. Afatay Kez Shinav, you must freeze his teeth. The Emolo, you must tell him about Brazas Hashem Libi Tzeisi Mitzraim, Liva Leilai. Now, this is really interesting because the fact of the matter is, Kofar Be'ikr actually didn't even happen in Egypt. Second of all, for goodness sakes, who left Egypt? They were all pagans that just had a certain ethnic identity. They kept Jewish Canaanite styles, if you want to call them. They kept ethnic names of the Yaakov family. and they spoke Ivrit, Lashon Kodesh, you can call it that, which the Ramban points out as a Canaanite dialect. They really had no nationhood. There was no nation. It was a family, a tribe. A nation demands common history, culture, and obviously land. Didn't own any land. Eretz Canaan was not theirs. They didn't have a common culture. They had no Torah yet. All they had was Sheva Mitzvot Bnei Noach, which was a universal reality. So what made them into a nation except for a familial bond? They weren't a nation yet. Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon writes, "Ein Uma Seinu Uma Ela B'Torasa." Our nation is only a nation with the common culture of our Torah. There was no, it was not an ethnic identity to the extent of a nationalistic identity. It was simply a group identity. And that's what allowed them to leave Egypt. Yet we tell this child, yet we know, according to the Ritva, we are addressing the child which left Egypt in Shuta Shel Mikra. So if the Mikra is talking about the child that left Egypt, there was a pagan, it's obvious that what the Mechilta is saying is not addressing the child of the Mikra, but another child. I'd like to understand that more. This is the first problem which presents itself. The second pasuk, which deals with the mitzvahs of Sipur Yetizat Mitzraim, is in source Zion, and that's in Perek Yud Gimel. I'm going to start reading Perek Yud Gimel. Actually, we have a few of the psukim here in source Zion. I'm going to read most of them, just to get a broad idea. It's in Shvi of Parshas Bay, Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Aleph. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Lemor, and God spoke to Moses, and this is what he said. I say this is what he said because that's how the Ramban explains Lemor al pi pshuto shemikra. It doesn't mean to say to others. It means, and this is what he said. Kadishli kol b'chor, sanctify for me, or set aside for me, rather, all firstborn, petuk or rechem, first extirpation of the womb, b'bnei Yisrael, of the Israelites, ba'adam u'ba'behema, whether it be the womb of man, Homo sapien, or the womb of animal, lihu, this belongs to God. This is the mitzvah of B'chayra. Vayemer Moshe la'am. Now, this is what God told Moshe to tell the Jews. Now, Moshe told this to the Jews, but elaborated. And what did he say? Remember this day that you left Egypt. Which day? We're talking about the day that they left. Tesvav ben Nisan. It's because you must remember this day because you went out with God showing in a show of strength, if we may say, to extricate you from Egypt. And you should not eat. Chametz should not be eaten. Now you read the pasuk, what does that say? It seems to be saying a broad principle, and this is something which has to be explained. There's a mitzvah, many mitzvahs which are Zecher Liyetzias Mitzrayim. The understanding behind that is that it wasn't that there's a mitzvah, remember the extrication from Egypt. Rather, the remembering the extrication from Egypt is the background, the idea, the message, and the platform in which we do certain mitzvahs. And these mitzvahs are there to enhance that basic memory. And one of it is, Lo Yachel Chametz. Do not eat chametz, because through this you'll remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. Then it says the next thing, Ayom atem yotzim b'chodesh aviv, you are leaving in spring. V'ayan God ki v'acha Hashem al eretz haknani achitem aviachiz avusia gigasha avusia shenishbal avisecha los ezer chodvash. God will come and bring you to the land of Israel. V'avatas avoda azois b'chodesh hazeh. You will serve this avoda in that month. What is it you're supposed to do? Shivat Yamim Tuchal Matzot. V'yom Hashvi Chag LaHashem. If before it was just Lo Ye'achel Chametz, now we're explaining it in depth. You must have only matzah, and you must for 7 days. For it is a holiday for God, and the seventh day. All this is Zecher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim. Matzot Ye'achel et Shivat Yamim v'lo Yira'eh Lecha Chametz v'Yira'eh Lecha Chod V'Lecha. Beforehand we had Isra Achila, now we had Isra B'Yira'eh B'Yamatzah. They are also expressions of the underlying principle of remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim. Then it says, "V'gata lebincha b'yamahu leimar, ba'avuzeh asa Hashem li b'tzeisi b'Mitzrayim." logical deduction would be that this also is an independent mitzvah, which its platform is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. But in reality, that is not actually accurate. Rambam writes in Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah, you have it in source Dalet, Mitzvahs Hasei Shel Torah, L'saper b'nisim v'niflaot, we are to relate of the miracles, which means the supernatural phenomena, v'niflaos, and in the wonderful non-supernatural phenomenon, Shena'asu la'avisen b'Mitzrayim. One must always see the Rambam is underlying the difference in a nes and a pella. Because they didn't say Baruch she'asali nes b'makom hazeh. Most Rishonim say that is only something like the stones falling down from heaven, like by Yeshua or Shema B'Giva in Daim, when it's a supernatural phenomenon. I still remember there was a whole hoo-ha when the great salvation, the Gashayat Shmai of Tzal saved the people in Uganda, in Teba, whether we should or should not say Baruch she'asali nes b'makom hazeh. I would say, without going to names, overwhelmingly all except for one Torah scholars of great magnitude felt that there was no place to say Baruch she'asali nes b'makom hazeh, for it wasn't a supernatural phenomenon. There was one very, very, very prominent Torah scholar which felt that you should, but at the moment I'm going to follow the thinking of the mainstream of halachic thinking. And that is, there's a big difference between a nes and a pella. Obviously, one who sees the Makos can understand that. For whatever reason, part of the story of Egypt is to point out the difference. Out of all the 10 Makos, how many of them were really supernatural? And how many of them were nothing more than a manipulation of science, but not breaking the laws? I posit the only two which are definitely miracles were Dam and Barad. Dam, to take water and transform it into blood, unless you believe in alchemy, simply cannot happen. That's breaking the laws of science. Their molecular structure is different. That's a miracle. Barad, to have ice balls with fire in them, is impossible. The fire melts water and water extinguishes fire. That's not manipulation. That is changing the laws of physics. Yet all the other ones, if you look at them carefully, it's like Tzfardeya. The fact that all the frogs decided to jump into people's houses, this is not changing the laws of science. This is manipulating science in a certain way. I mean, it reminds me of an old movie by Hitchcock called The Birds. I mean, this is a pella. I don't see this at all as a nes. The fact that there is dever, I hate to say it, there's dever running around now in a different form. That alone does not mean to say it's a nes. It's a pella. It all happened at a certain time and only in a certain place, limited, as opposed to this virus that we have things all over the place that did not go to Eretz Goshen. Very nice. This is manipulating the laws of science. It is not changing the laws of science, not breaking the laws of science. You read the Chumash on your own and you will see there are actually only two things there which are nisim. Maybe a third, but we won't go into it. And the rest are all pella. That's what the Rambam points out. We must remember the night of Pesach that God did both nisim and niflaos, shenatzu of Mitzrayim. Why is this important? I will explain, hopefully, probably on our Sunday. Shenatzu la'avishenu b'Mitzrayim, v'lech hamishos b'nisan shenemer, as the pasuk says, zachor es hayom hazeh sheyatzasem b'Mitzrayim. Rambam brings the mitzvahs hasei. The mitzvahs hasei is the mitzvah of zachor. So what is the relationship between the zachor and the v'higadita? Well, the Rambam continues. U'minayin shebalech hamisho asar chamud lomar v'higadita lebincha b'yom u'leimor ba'avur zeh. What does ba'avur zeh mean? By the way, in Chumash, ba'avur zeh, Rashi says she'akayim mitzvaysav. For example, matzah and more. Matzah and more only an example. The idea is ba'avur zeh, that I should fulfill his will. You see from this Rambam that Vigadita is not a separate mitzvah The mitzvah is nothing more than zachor. Vigata is the pasuk which describes the fashion of how to do this zachor. And ultimately, when we see the fashion, which is through Haggadah, through relating and speaking, we understand that is done only on the 15th at night. We realize that is the zman for the mitzvah of zachor. We come to a conclusion that the mitzvah of zachor, there are times when it is nothing more than the platform for other mitzvahs. And there are times when it is basically a mitzvah of its own, and that's Vigata Lebincha. And that's the pasuk that we're reading now, when it says Vigata Lebincha, connecting it pasuk ches to pasuk gimel. It boils down that Vigata Lebincha b'yamul leimar, remember through speaking. I say this explicitly because the Rosh writes in the Shuvas and Kal Chav Daled that the reason that we don't make a bracha on Sipur Mitzraim, he says because it's a mitzvah shebelev. The primary mitzvah is not the talking, it's engraving a memory in your heart or in your mind, and engraving that memory in the hearts and the mind of your children and grandchildren and so on and so forth. The medium is through Haggadah. The Rosh actually is of the opinion, unless the Chadrish asks, he believes you're Mekayim the mitzvah with memory without speech at all. That is a machlokes between Rambam and Rosh. But they both agree that the primary mitzvah is the memory. And a mitzvah which is primary mitzvah is the memory, and the speech is only a means towards an end and not an end of its own. There is no bracha. Maharal in verse Hashem, in chapter 62, Rosh says this explicitly without mentioning the Rosh. We probably didn't see the Chuvas Rosh. Right? The reason why we don't make a bracha, because the ikar, the mitzvah is the zikaron, is the kavanah. And saying the Haggadah without internalizing the memory, you haven't done a thing. It's a very important yesod in halacha. This is the Rambam, this is the Rosh, and this is the Maharal. So first of all, before we go further, Seder night is very important. It's not saying things. It's actually internalizing an idea. Memory, by definition, means the capability of bringing alive images of the past into the present. Memory doesn't just mean, oh, that was. It means the capability of really experiencing the past and the present, making it alive. When we ask God to remember the covenant, it doesn't mean, by the way, don't forget, like, remember there was a story that happened 3,000 years ago. It means let that memory live in your mind. We are people of memory, as you all know. Jews are obsessed with memory. Yes, because if we will not live constantly the past, we will never have a future. Food for thought, something that we'll talk about the Mitzraim hopefully on Sunday. But this is the mitzvah of Zachor Mitzrayim, and that is the mitzvah of Vigata Lebincha. Now, this pasuk is talking about Teshuvah of innocence. But look carefully, this pasuk does not have anybody asking questions. This pasuk is a mitzvah of memory through speech. Obviously, since it's an idea of memory through speech, and I said, therefore, hypothetically, it doesn't have anybody to ask questions. No question is mentioned here. This idea of Zachor goes further. Now go down to Pasuk Yud Aleph in Source Zion. You will pass over and give all that which is extricated from the womb to God. All that which is moved out of the womb of animals' wombs, which are males, you will give to God as a korban. Obviously, if you will have a firstborn which comes out of the womb of a donkey, you will redeem it with a sheep, because donkeys don't go on the mizbech. You should you not redeem it, but after you will behead it. And then your son also won't put him on the mizbech. Won't behead, rather you will simply redeem. And it will come to pass. Your child will ask you tomorrow. When is that tomorrow? This is what Chazal say, Yesh mocher la'achar zman. Yesh mocher la'achar zman, sometime in the future. Nothing to do with Nissen, nothing to do with Iyar. Sometime in the future, your child will ask you, Mazois. Now, I must be honest. What is this talking about here? The child will be reacting to the mitzvah of Pidyon Peter Chamor and its Arifa. Would you ask Mazois? I still remember the first time I saw this here in Haranof. They dressed up a donkey, as if it was, I don't know, Cinderella going to the ball. And they brought it to a kohen in the middle of over here, and they had this little shepsula, and they did this whole pidyon. And I'm looking, this was really funny. It was awkward, to say the least. I mean, honestly, my child was next to me and his jaw dropped, and he's not a tam. Says, what is this? I would imagine that in witnessing a pidyon peter chamor or arifa would have all of us jaws drop, and we'd all say, what is this? It's saying this is terrible frustration. Like, what is this weird thing? Sounds somewhat awkward, to say the least. I would imagine the Mazos to be a very healthy question. Honestly, true. He doesn't formulate it in a proper theological question. He's just like puzzled. What is this? His reaction is healthy and normal. I would see many a great thinker just say that afterwards they may reformulate the question. So, well, how does this fit with whatever it will be my perception of theology? But the knee-jerk reaction is going to be Mazois. And when's he asking this question? This Pidyon Petach Chamor, sometimes in the middle of Tammuz. And what do we answer to this child? God took us out of Egypt, the house of bondage, with a strong hand. But and it came to pass, Pharaoh was stubborn and callous and did not want to send us. And God then killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from man to animal. Al-Kain is because of that. And that's the reason. The reason is this commemorates Makas B'chayros. You must actually write this down and remember in your hand and between your eyes, and you must remember. What does the pasuk said here? This is a question of someone asking a question about Pidyon Petach Chamor, sometimes in a Tammuz, and we actually give him a good answer. We answer why Pidyon Petach Chamor and why Kedushas HaBchorah. Is this a question about the night of the Seder? Not at all. The answer is not even an answer about the night of the Seder. The answer is directly answering a question dealing with Kedushas HaBchorah. This has nothing to do with the night of Pesach. And actually the pasuk continues, by the way, that same din of remembering Zechor now includes, as you see, Isser, Chametz, Matzah, Haggadah, and finally Kedushas HaBchorah and Tefillin. You must put this Zachor on your hands. Why? Chazik Yod is a reason for the mitzvah of Zachor. You must become the Zachor through your hands and your head through Tefillin. Derech Agav, it would seem to be, as the Bach writes, that any time it says Laman, when the Torah describes the mitzvah for a purpose, that purpose is Me'akev. That's why when it says by tzitzis, Laman Tizku, people putting on tzitzis without the kavanah of Zechiras tzitzis, according to the Bach, it's Ma'akev. If you're aware of that, you should be aware of that. He believes that sitting in sukkah without remembering, keep a sukkah the Shavtis make Yisrael is Ma'akev. He mentions the same things with tzitzis. L'chayra, according to that tefillin, without understanding that I'm doing this to remember the Chayzik Yod of Yetizat Mitzraim, is l'chayra also Ma'akev. If we will be charitable, we'll say it's not mitzvah kil chasa. It's very important to remember what's in the tefillin and to think about it before you or when you put them on. I suggest saying the Yeratzin before tefillin, which explains exactly what's in the tefillin. Without that awareness, you seem to be lacking. I'm going to be charitable here, at least lacking in the shleimus of the mitzvah of Zechar and Siyam Mazesh Yetizat Mitzraim, which its surah is tefillin. Anyway, getting back to this, so far, of all these psukim, there's only one of them who deals with the night of Pesach. And then finally, we have the last one, which is source ches and Dvarim Vav. Let's read the question and the answer of the psukim in Dvarim Vav and try to understand how that pasuk has anything to do with the night of Pesach. Once again, your son will ask you in the future, when Rosh Chodesh Elul, literal translation would be, what are the statutes, laws, and the I would say those are commemorative laws, those statutes, and the basic logical laws which God, our Lord, commanded you, which is fair. He's talking to his parents, which were there at Sinai or heard from the Oil Moed. God's commanded them directly. And he says, well, what are the things? You were the people that were commanded, and he's asking what they are. If this is the pshat in the question, then if you read the following two psukim, no answer is given. Look at the question. Is the question, what is Torah? When we should take out of a chumash and start reading Torah mitzvahs. What is the answer to the question is but in the mikra? You shall say to your child, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Once again, he took us out with a strong arm. Now, what does this mean? And he explains, I'd like to translate the terms because it's going to come to a lot of later explanation. What is Oisais and what is Maifsim? Oisais means signs that he exists. Maifsim means proof. We say about Maifis, we think it means a miracle. That's not what the word Maifis means if you know Lashon HaKodesh. Maifis means Haichacha, proof. The famous Ramban in the Hagdama to Sefer Muhammad Hashem writes that in the Chachma of Torah there's no Mofet Chotech Kemo Atishboret. When you deal with arithmetic or mathematics, you can have exact proof. It's mathematically true. When it comes to a Smorei Achroi and Halacha, a lot of it has to do with an inner intuition based on a cultured mind and an informed mind. Not talking about those people who collect views of other people like a Chamor Neisisvarim. I mean, people like which are capable of paskening from the Shas, Moshe Feinstein, etc., those great people, that they are weiter Abusayna Gdaila Apaiskim Ad Rishonim. This is what the Ramban says. There's no Maifis Chaytech. It really depends on a nevuah shnitna l'chacham, I would say intuition, a very educated intuition. Sometimes you wonder, what does one Rishon say X and one say Y, and we can somehow understand what the thinking behind them are. But why did you choose A over Y, and why did you choose Y over A? That we cannot prove, and no one can prove. That's what Maifis means. Maifis means a chacha. So Oisais and Maifis means signs of his existence and proof of his existence. One has to remember that. So when God took us out of Egypt, those osos, those Moses were enormous, and they were actually detrimental and bad. He did this to them in front of us, for we were to see this and to understand this. This pasuk immediately takes you back to the pasuk in source Hey, where the pasuk there writes specifically, Vayoma Hashem Moshe Bo'el Paro, come with me to Pharaoh. I made callous his sensitivities and the sensitivities of his servants. Laman, in order, why I made them callous? Shiti, that I will implant or place these signs of my existence in their midst. And what's this for? Uleman tesaper baznei bincho ben bincho, in order for you to relate to your children and your grandchildren, Eit asher alalti b'Mitzrayim, that which I would say manipulated or finagled with the Egyptians, vet ototai, those signs of my existence, asher samti bam, which I had placed within them for one person only. You have there in 4 bold lettered words. The goal of this all is v'yadatem, thus you will know, ki ani Hashem, that I am God. Now the word Yudke Vavke is translated by the Ramban in Parshas Yisrael on the pasuk Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and he translates it as follows: Yudke Vavke means Hovek Kadmon, the primary existent. Hashem Imenu Hakol, that everything derives from him. Bechayfetz, with his will, v'yacholos, and with his omnipotence. Yudke Vavke means Hovek Kadmon Asher Mimenu Hakol B'Chayfetz V'Yacholos. Elokecha means, and since we realize that, Roi La'avoid Osoi, ultimately we should want to serve him, for he is the one that created the world through his will. We are expressions of his will. Ultimately, we are nothing more than pawns on the board, and he is the player. Our purpose is to recognize that. That's how the Ramban explains that in Parshas Yisrael. I suggest you look it up. And Anochi Hashem Elokecha. And this is what the pasuk says. All those maifsim were le'einenu, for our eyes to see, in order to have Yedias Hashem. Once again, elaborate that later. I just want to understand the basic psukim. So we're going back to source Ches. This is what I'm telling the child. I am telling the child, we were slaves once in Egypt, and God took us out with a strong show, equals with Isis and maifsim. Le'einenu. We encountered God. We actually saw and understood. The primary existent, that all is nothing more than expression of his will and his whim. And Roy La'avodah, say ultimately, therefore, and this is the pasuk of Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hotzeisecha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. This is what we understood. La'inenu. So first of all, we tell the child, we met God in, someplace. I met you at Sinai. We met him in Egypt. God extricated, took us out of that place. Leman, for one purpose, Haviotanu, to bring us, Latet Lanu, to give us the Aretz Nishma Lavotenu, to give us that land. And therefore what? He continues and says, Vayitsavenu, and he commanded us, Hashem, that Yudke Vavke that we encountered. Commanded us to do all these laws. Well, obviously, if the child is asking what laws, then he hasn't told us anything. Obviously, the question of the child was not what are the laws, but why are we religious, Daddy? Why do we do these things? What is the reason you decided to accept this relationship with God, in which you're bonded and obliged? And we tell him, because we met him. We met him at Sinai, and we met him in Egypt. And he took us out of Egypt, and he commanded us, literally, this is nothing more than a retake of the words, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Ovekadmon, Shenito HaKol B'Chayvetz V'Yacholos, Al Kain Ra'ui La'avodoto. Lashon Rambani Yisrael. Because we realize there's a truth there, because there's a God and we are nothing more than expressions of his will and his whim. And he commanded us to do these laws. That's why we do them. And then the little cherry on the cake. What is the purpose? What does God want with all these laws? The Yeroas Hashem Elokeinu, that we should stand in awe in front of God our Lord. That Yudke Vavke, that Elokeinu that we know. We're standing in awe in front of him. I'd like to refer to the Moreh Nevuchim, chapter before the last, which actually describes this idea that the mitzvahs, mostly mitzvahs, but even mitzvahs aseh, their ultimate goal is to live in an ultimate God awareness. God describes a certain way of doing things and living, which is conducive to us developing a God awareness. God awareness, by definition, will create awe. I mean, goodness sakes, if I would have to live with Rav Soloveitchik, Zechron Livracha, no. for a week, I'd be in total awe. My brains would probably fall out. Can you imagine living with God awareness? Yes, this creates this creates a sense of awe. And that's what this means. The mitzvahs are there to develop a sense of God awareness and ultimate awe. What's this for? L'tayv lanu. This is what's good for us. Kol hayamim. All of those days, for us to live properly as we live today. It's what the pasuk says, Ma Hashem Elokecha Derish Mechakim Liyira. And this is what we tell the child. When we continue, we say the words lanu. Once again, one has to explain the term. You know, the Rama writes, I think it's actually the last chapter of the Meira, differentiates between tzedakah and chesed. Because most people don't do chesed, they do tzedakah. I think few people do chesed. Tzedakah means to say you do something you feel is right. You may not have a legal obligation, but you have a moral obligation which hinges on your freedom and forces you to do certain things. Poor man, no, you live in Jerusalem, so you know you knock on your door every so often. And they ask you for money, and I've analyzed myself more than once. I will give him the money. It depends how guilty I feel, the fact that I have and he doesn't. And if he generates enough sense of, you know, I really should be giving to him because he doesn't have and I do, I don't do it out of chesed. I simply do it out of, I want to release my moral pangs. I have a moral obligation. It's tzedek, it's tzedakah. That's what tzedakah means, doing the right thing because of a self-induced moral obligation. Chesed is altruism. Expanding yourself limitlessly without any inducement, without any reason. That's why incest is also called chesed. Ishki yikach es achaysai chesedu. Rambam brings this. There are times that chesed is negative, but most times it's used in a positive sense. That's altruism. You don't give because to release your moral pangs, rather you give because how could you not? Not that many people I know are Balei Chesed. It's a big schus to be a Balei Chesed. Anshe Tzedakah Baruch Hashem, there's a lot. Something to think about. This is Rambam. Literally, what should see this Rambam is found in the last two prophets. This, I think, is in the last page of the Moreh Nevuchim. So when this person said Tzedakah Te'ilanu, it means it will be the right thing to do. Tzedakah Te'ilanu will be the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to keep these mitzvahs. Why? Lifnei Hashem Elokeinu, for we stand in front of Yud Kei Vav Kei of Hoive Kadman Shmimeno Hakol B'Chefetz V'Yachaylis Elokeinu V'Roi Lavod. So I'm looking at this pasuk. This has nothing to do with Sipur Yetizat Mitzraim. This has to do with something totally different. It has to do with someday in Chodesh Elul. I still remember myself asking this question to my father, for goodness sakes. Not in such a beautiful way of chukim and mishpatim. I simply asked, why are we religious? I still remember it. Remember being challenged, a child born of a Holocaust survivors, which are around you, so many Jews have walked away from God out of anger. And a lot of my friends were Jewish kids, which were not religious at all. And I was like, you know, grew up in a religious family. Well, you grow up very fast, then you ask, well, why are we religious? And the truth of the matter is, without going into depth, I will do this some other time to explain the depth of this answer. But that's the question this child Chacham is asking. He's asking it machar. Someday God was right. Yeah, there's a child which is going to ask this question. God is not to ask these questions.
Restaurant? Okay.
That would have been a problem.
Why religious?
Well, I mean, we just need gas.
I need a pee. I'm a female. Where are my pee?
Why?
Where would I?
Okay. So, and this is the answer. And the answer is we're religious because we encountered the Hoive Kadmam Shimenu Hakol B'Chefetz V'Yachaylis V'Roi Lavod Oisai. And we understand that all this he wants because we want to stand perpetual awareness of what we encountered then. We met him then. He wants us to keep thinking of that then. He wants us to have Yira Oisai Kol Hayamim. We shouldn't lose. Right? Literally, Mitzraim. Do not lose that awareness of how the kadman should be menu hakol be'ichepetz v'yacholis l'chein roi lavid oisai. And that's why we do these mitzvahs, because he told us to do so, and there's no way we won't. But we realize who we are and who he is, and we're nothing but expressions of his will. It's this total annihilation of the sense of self, realizing my purpose lies in his will. My purpose lies in his wisdom, not in mine. The agenda is his and not mine. His agenda is not to make me nicer and better. His agenda is to make me very much aware that he is who he is. To stand in awe. That's the agenda. Not to make you feel better or be good. There are religions which are anthropocentric, like Christianity. We have a God which crucifies his own son to cleanse people from a cardinal sin. Very Western approach to religion, which religion is there to serve man and better him. It is true, as the Rambam and Ramban elaborate, that multitudes of mitzvahs that to make you a better person. But the goal of that is not you. The goal of that is ultimately that you will stand in awe in front of God for his will, that the man should constantly be aware of him. Ramban writes at the end of Parshas Bay that he sees no other reason for creation or all of Torah mitzvahs except for one thing. Sheyeda ha'adam ki akel bor'o v'yoda lo al tach. Man should be aware that God created him, and he will actually admit that. It means really live that truth, not just pay lip service to it. You can read the Ramban at the end of Parshas Bay. These are the psukim. Now you ask yourself a simple question: what does this have to do with the night of Pesach? There's only one pasuk here which deals with the night of Pesach. The first pasuk, what we call the Rasha, has to do with Yud Daled B'Nissen, about the Shchitas HaPesach. The third pasuk that we call the Tam is actually, I think, a child which is in awe, or rather puzzled by the weird mitzvah of Arifas HaPetach Hamor, Pidyon Petach Hamor. And he says, Mazus, and that could be in the middle of a Tammuz. And we explain at length Kedushas B'Chayra. And then we have the fourth pasuk, which deals with the Isha Chacham, which is simply asking, what is the basis of why we do anything? That's the psukim. That's what God writes in the Torah. In light of this, we have to go back to the Mechilta. It's a Mechilta Rabbi Yishmael, which takes these psukim of the Agada somewhere totally different. Definitely not working with Pshuta Shel Mikra, not working with the Mikra at all at the level of a scripture, because whatever we're going to say, the questions on B'chayra, the questions of Chacham are nothing to do with the night of Pesach. And yet the Mechilta in Parshas Bay, the Mechilta Rabbi Yishmael, does say Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah. Mechilta starts that there is obviously a, let me read the Mechilta inside. He writes, Yesh Machor Achshav, Yesh Machor La'achar Zman. Mazot Arei Machor La'achar Zman. Machar Yiyeh Ot Hazeh, that's sometime in the future. Machar Yamru B'neichen L'baneinu, Harei Machar La'achar Zman. That's how he starts. And then he reads, Ma Edus V'achukim Ha'mishpatim. Nimtzeta Omer, you find this thus. Arba Banim Haim, there are 4 sons. This is the exact lashon of the Mechilta. Echad Chacham, Echad Rasha, Echad Tam, Echad Shenedeh Lishol. Chacham Ma'o Omer, Ma Edus V'achukim Ha'mishpatim Asher Tziva Hashem Elokeinu. Oisanu, that's the conspiracy here. And we answer, Afatop Sachle Behilches HaPesach E Maftirin Acher HaPesach HaTikayim. Now, I don't mind the drushes that you say in the Agada, what's talking the Pshat and the Mechilta. Pshat and the Mechilta, he actually understands, so to speak, the Pasuk is talking about the night of Pesach, which is really not Pshat in the Pasuk. And he said that the question is, what exactly are the laws? And what answer do we give to a question who asks, what are the laws? We learn with him Hilchos Pesach. Now, you obviously know the times of the Mechilta, Second Temple, there was no Shulchan Aruch, obviously no Mishnah Brura, and no Reb Shimon Eider's halachilot. When you say Kol Hashayna halachas b'chol yom muftach le'Shimon Eiler haba, it does not mean Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It means Mishnayos. The Mishnayos, you read the Akdama, the Rambam, to the Pirush HaMishnah, the Mishnayos are the halachas pesukos. The Gemara teaches us the codes, how to see normative halacha in the Mishnayos. But that was the halacha book. Kol Hashayna halachas b'chol yom means Mishnayos. Just want to put this on the table. Okay, with great respect to all different interpretations, there were no other books available at the time. When we talk about here, he asked, what are the laws? We tell him, Hilchos HaPesach. It's a nice way of saying we learn Masechtas Pesachim. And what is the end of Mishnah of Masechtas Pesachim, Perek Av Pesachim? The Mishnah of Ein Maftirin Acher HaPesach Afikoman. After we finish the Korban Pesach, we do not have dessert. That's what it means. Afikoman is not the name of a matzah. Afikoman is after you finish the meal, you don't have dessert. The matzah that we eat is really not the afikoman. That is the matzah of the mitzvah. We're not allowed to eat afikoman after that matzah. I really do not know Adayam Mazeh, but once we got the idea that that matzah is called afikoman. Afikoman means literally bring out the sweets. Bring out the sweets. We do not say after the end of the meal, bring out the sweets, which means we don't have dessert after the end of the meal. What is our end of the meal? That last kazayis matzah. Just to inform you, this is a sugya for itself. I plan to teach it in yeshiva next week. But yeah, this is what this really means. So what are we telling him? That's the last halacha. It's a nice way of saying, Yingala, learn Masechtas Pesachim with him. Rash Mishan Staka says in Teres Koyanim, he writes that the mitzvah of Sipur Mitzraim includes learning Hilchos Pesach. You can learn Rambam Hilchos Korban Pesach. That's part of the Kiyum Din of. It's also part of the Din of Sipur Mitzraim. And this is the question. Now, let's be honest. This is not the pasuk. The pasuk's not asking about Mel Mitzrayim. He's not asking information. The pasuk is asking why you're religious. The answer given the pasuk has nothing to do with what the Mechilta says. What is the Mechilta doing? Let's go to the next one. Rasha Ma'oimer. Ma'avoid Zosh Lachem. Okay, that could be a possibility. Lachem v'leilai. As he points out, that makes no sense. There is no kira at that time. You're in the wrong part of history. Afatai ketchinov, you must freeze his teeth. Ve'amolo and say him, ba'averzah Hashem libetzeis Mitzrayim, leave it alone. Ilah Yasham leha nigo yisa nigo. This is definitely not the answer that the Chumash gives. Chumash gives a totally different answer. Chumash gives, goodness sakes, you may be a pagan and believe in Aries or Ra, but you're a mensch, and you should have gratitude for the fact that God skipped over our houses and saved us. That's not the sharp answer, the retort given here, almost telling him, shut up and get out. I mean, we've driven him off the table here, let's be honest. Tell a person that came to shul, actually, you would never be redeemed, you would die in Makas Choshech. And you expect them to stay. It's like, you know what I mean? You just gave them a Shabeirach. Is this the pasuk? No, it's not the pasuk. It's so far from the pasuk that it's the anti-pasuk. How do we understand this? What is Rabbi Shmuel and Mechilta doing with these psukim? And then the next one, outside of the fact that the pasuk isn't even talking about the night of Pesach. It's talking about Yud Daled. Let's go to the next one. Obviously, the Mechilta understands we're talking about the night of Pesach. Because we see from the answer, what about the rest of the pasuk? explaining Kedusha's B'chaira? No. He took those words and put them to another place. What about Pesach? The pasuk is not talking about Pesach. The pasuk is talking sometime in the future. Tammuz. This is the only one which is accurate. At Psachle, by the way, once again, at in Lashon Glila equals a Lashon of Yerushalmi and many Tanoim is Lashon Zachar. It means at instead of atah, we write at, as you learn Yerushalmi. Remember, the child that told me at Psachle, that is the obligation of the mother, this was obviously ignorant. At is Lashon is Zachar, at, Antu Malka. Okay? At means atta in Lashon in Galilean Hebrew. Okay, Vagat Labincha, etc. Now the obvious question is, what is the Mechilta doing? What are we doing in this Arba Banim? What is the purpose of all this? It's very clear what's happening here. Rabbi Shmuel is not saying Pshat and Sukkim. Rabbi Shmuel is not saying that these psukim are talking about Sipur Yetizat Mitzraim. Rabbi Shmuel is not telling us this is what God meant in this pasuk. No. What Rabbi Shmuel is doing is saying, no, there's a mitzvah of Yigat L'Bincha the night of Pesach. Well, there are 4 types of sons which you have to talk to and relate to in the night of Seder. Bincha is categorized by 4. We find 4 sons in the Mikra in a totally different context. Now we must transport these sons to the night of Pesach. That's what's happening. We find the Rosh in the contents of a question on Yud Daled B'Iyah, Nisan. And there we have a totally different answer. We find a Chacham in Mikra Chodesh Elul talking about religious beliefs. We take that son and transport him to our Seder night, and so to speak, put into his mouth questions which deal with the Seder night. That's what he's doing. He's taking biblical typology, taking biblical types, and using pieces of psukim to basically put questions dealing with the Seder night in these people's mouths. And then he offers solutions, not which are found always in the Mikra, but rather what he thinks is the appropriate answer to those children at the night of Pesach. And let's look what he does. This actually, the first time I copped this really well was a Ritva. The Ritva literally writes that the pasuk, when it talks to V'yem lechem b'neichem by the Rasha, is talking about the child that was born in Egypt. He's an Ovid Avodah Zarah like all of us. And he left. Hayasham v'nigal. He's going to ask a question. What's it Zaynich Verstehnish? You know, we worship Aries and Ra. Why are we doing this for Yud Kei Vav Kei? And the pasuk gives the appropriate answer. But the Mechilta says there's going to be other children later in history, which are not just Nebuch born in Egypt within paganism, and therefore they're basically pagans, but they actually will be kaifrim, heretics. Well, anybody knows Jewish history, that means he's talking about the contemporary child of the times of Rabbi Shmuel, Bayis Sheni. As I mentioned before, the Rambam says, be made Bayis Sheni, Sos Haminus. That's when heretics came to be. That's when Kfira came to be. The world never knew what it means to live without a god before Greece. It's only from the Hellenistic period and on which man learned to live without a god, and the gods of the Olympus, at the best, are a non-functional group of violent people which have no morals or issues. They're immoral, they're vicious, they're violent, they're incestuous. And we don't really look for them for morals and ethics. At the best, what we do is we have to appease them, because if we don't, they'll throw thunder at us. God of Kfira, the gods of Greece, were the gods of the world of Kfira. We didn't believe in them as anything. They were powers we had to appease. We didn't look at them for guidance, for moral compass, for anything at all. We made by his sheni tzatz aminus. That is the child that he's talking about, the Mishmol, Ben Doirai. So it may be true that the pagan child that left Egypt basically, believes in God, just he chooses to have his own God. I mean, the old story about Rama writes this in Ilchos Avodah Zarah. Well, I'm not going to do it. At the end, they all believed originally in a God creator. They simply chose not to worship him. They did not want a direct relationship with him. And they chose to have a direct relationship with their local gods that somehow spoke with them at their level. I once gave this example in yeshiva. I says, can you imagine I'm a simple worker and the president of the company on the 88th floor calls me and says, I like you. I want you to have your office next to me. And I want you to be my friend. And I'd freak out. This guy drinks, only single malts, plays golf, and you have to speak the Queen's English. I'd rather live with my department head, which drinks beer, gets drunk at Super Bowl, and eats hero sandwiches and goes bowling. I know he's my boss, and I know his authority comes from the president, but at least with him, I can wear my torn jeans and my T-shirt. With this guy, I got to wear a tie every day. That basically was a psychological thing which drove people to paganism. They did not believe in God. They did not want a direct relationship with him. They preferred having a relationship with the help. It's like some guy will say, I don't want a relationship with the Rosh Yeshiva. I don't mind having someone with the Sgan Mashgiach. That's the idea. Ultimately, they forgot the Rosh Yeshiva. They worshipped only the Sgan Mashgiach. But that's how this started. Read Rambam Avodah Zarah, Perik Aleph. So the Ovid of Avodah Zarah in the times of Egypt, he did not think that Ares created the world. He understood that Ares is the tool or is the nobleman in the court of some creator, which I deal with. I have no reason or will to deal with this creator. I don't even know him anymore. I don't even know if he cares about us. The one who cares about me is Ares, sun, sheep, whatever it only be. This is a religious person. He just chooses, it's like you want to go to a shul where the rabbi says the right thing. Now, you don't go to a shul where the rabbi tells you don't speak Lashon Hara, don't talk during davening, everyone has to be makbid entire time, mishpachah, Shabbos, no. Do me a favor. If the rabbi talks fluffy Judaism, which is not committal, that's the rabbi you want to go to. You can continue living your life, and you don't mind if whatever is happening after is after davening. This is another pasha. This is the fellow that the Ovid of Mitzraim. They do not want the obligation of the overwhelming infinite God. They prefer a relationship with the local nobleman, so to speak. That's a person which does have morals, does understand Hakar Satayv. And the answer is, listen, maybe you don't worship Yudke Vavke, but listen, you got to be a mensch. This Yudke Vavke, you don't want to worship him, but he actually saved your skin. It's a good answer. The heretics, the Ben Rush at the times of Rabbi Shmuel, is this boy of Kfira, Kafa Be'ikr, Bais Sheni. He actually believes there's nothing but man, and he looks for morals and ethics only within himself. He actually has law. He has no morals at all. He couldn't care less. This is the type of person, should he have been in Egypt, he would not have been redeemed. If you're an Ovid of Avodah Zarah, I can still talk to you. Avodah Zarah means you believe in a truth from above, beyond man's comprehension. You just went to the wrong shtibel, so to speak. You're redeemable as long as you have a Jewish ethnic identity. The Kafir Be'ikr, doesn't believe in anything, nothing redeemable. Shani Minus the Mashka, the Gemara says if you have to jump to a base of Avodah Zarah or a base Minus to save yourself, go to a base of Avodah Zarah, not to a base of Minus. Shani Minus the Mashka, that's what the Gemara says. So one has to understand that, that is an answer for that child at that time. It's a very dated piece of mechilta. I say this because just as, for example, and this is important, we are parents, grandparents, teachers, the language of education has to somehow relate to the people that you're educating. I discussed this actually at the dinner in New York when I was there. There's no way today that you can be mechanech with the pasuk chosech shiftay soina b'nai. It worked for me, for my father to me, but it did not work and couldn't work for me to my children. And now it's totally obviously so. There's no way that today we can educate with the Gemara and Makos of Hakoah Shel Mitzvah of striking our children and flogging them. With greatest respect, it won't work. You'll do the opposite. There's no way we can fulfill the eitzes of the Gra and Zigeres HaGra, which literally says that you should hit the children. It won't work. You will send them off to your huppets. They will not come back anymore. So I would say that the language of the Agad of Hakeh Shina Ila Yishem Leya Nigo was obviously appropriate. It's definitely not what the Bible prescribes. Obviously, talking at the dated Russia at the time, I would say that today the Russia is different. It's a world which is full of morals and ethics, a bit tipsy-turvy and convoluted, but is a world which basically believes in moral rights and the right and the wrong, gratitude, etc. One would expect that today's Russia would go back to the biblical answer and read the Psukim Kipshuta. I'm not saying we shouldn't say the Agada the way it's written in the Nusach, but when I have to explain it to my child at the Agada, I will probably continue and say the Pshat in the Pasuk. That is that Russia. So I'm trying to say what we're doing here. Rabbi Shmuel is not explaining Psukim. He is taking biblical characters, transporting them to somewhere where the Chumash didn't put them. Leil Pesach. How these type of people would ask questions on Leil Pesach, the people which are dated at the time of Rabbi Shmuel, and how we should answer them. Ultimately, once again, so he took the good old Tam. Tam is going to be a Pesach. But we have a Tam means a non-intelligent question. Mazois is a non-intelligent question. What is this? He does not take the context of the question as was written in the Chumash. He is puzzled at this weird mitzvah of Pidyon Petach Hamah. I still remember a donkey dressed up in silks with jewels literally on him, and they gave him to a kohen. It was like funny. I saw this in Hanof. I also said Mazois. I also said Mazois. Who wouldn't say Mazois on that? And he transports it to the mitzvahs of Pesach, and there's no Mazois there. Certain religious customs. There's no puzzling Mazois. This implies he isn't too smart. So we answer him very simply. God took us out of Egypt. We don't add more to that. We don't add the part of Kedusha's B'chayra because he's not asking about Kedusha's B'chayra. We literally took the psukim out of context using the person, the character, and taking parts of the question answer out of context to fit it with he got to Birch of Leil Pesach. The Chacham, that's clear as day as we elaborated. The pasuk asked, the child asked in the middle of Tishrei about what's the basis of my religion, and we take it to explain. He's sitting at the side and asking, "Give me information about the Mishnayos," and we answer, "Let's go learn a Mishnah." That's the answer. That's the pshat. The Chassidish drushes are from here until the end of the Golus and back. What does Rabbi Shmuel mean? This is Pashup Pshat. That's the Rosh Mishas that I taught you. That means Adin. You're Mekayim the mitzvah also with learning Hilchas Korban Pesach. This is stage one of this. So first of all, we learn here. This is very important to know that this is the das of the Mechilta. But oh God, another 10 minutes. There is another view which disagrees with this Mechilta. That's found in source Yud in Sefer HaMitzvahs. I just want to read that source and leave you with the question until Sunday. In source Yud, Sefer HaMitzvahs of the Rambam, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th line. V'loshon mechilta de Rashbi b'medrash Haggadah. Mechilta are the teachings. They were the teachings of Rabbi Shmuel, which is the contemporary of Rabbi Akiva. older Tana, and Rashbi, as we all know, was one of the youngest Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. Of the 4 Talmidim, which he renewed his, after the other ones died, the youngest one was Rashbi. And we know that this was the youngest one. This is the Mechilta of Rashbi, of Shimon Bar Yochai. And how does he understand this? Well, let's read this together. The Loshen Mechilta de Rashbi, Michlal Shenema ki yishalcha bincha. From that, the pasuk says ki yishalcha bincha machar. Now, what's that talking about? That pasuk? That's talking about why are we religious? Remember, in the Eschana. Yachol im yishalcha tamagid v'imlav ena tamagid. We would have thought halachically that the mitzvah v'yigadita in Leil Pesach is only if he asks, and if he doesn't ask, you don't have to do a mitzvah Leil Pesach. Talmud lomar v'yigata lebincha af al pi she'ino sho'alcha. What's this? This is already not transporting people, not saying drushes and sukkim. This is pshuta kemashmoi. The pasuk thought that since the pasuk in Dvarim says that he has to ask, we would have thought that the mitzvah in Shmais is only if you ask. Kemash from the pasuk in Shmais, there's a mitzvah even if you don't ask. That can only make sense if both psukim are talking about the same thing. How can we think that the pasuk dealing with religious quest has anything to do with the story of Leil Pesach, which is about telling the story of Egypt? And the Gemara thought so. The Gemara thought so that if religious quest is only ki yishalcha, then also the story of Egypt is only ki yishalcha. Here we must look for a common denominator, which is obviously true, and that's the basis of this question. Let's take this insight further. The Mechilta of the Rashbi continues. No, I'm going to stop. I'm going to add even more to it. Yes, that should be enough. We clearly see here, without going further, I want to teach for Sunday, it's late, that there's a machlekes of Rashbi and Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel in the Mechilta, which we have in the Agada, thinks that those psukim have nothing to do, I'll be pshat, with anything we do at the night of Pesach. He only uses them, transports them, and sticks in their mouths different ideas totally using biblical language. That's what's happening in your Agada. That's the Mechilta of Rabbi Shmuel. According to his understanding, there's no way we could add a havamina that whatever is happening in Pashas Chanan will define what we should be doing in the night of Pesach. That's in the middle of Tammuz, and this is Yud Tesvav Nisan, Apachim Tagbet Shabbos. Rashbi disagrees. He actually believes that that's which we talk to the child in Tammuz, and that which we talk to the child in Iyar is actually what we should be talking about on the night of Pesach. And therefore, if we learn the way of doing it there in Iyar, through that topic, through question, we would have thought that type of question, that type of topic can only dealt with questions even in the night of Pesach. It's a nice way of saying that the issue of the night of Pesach is not the story of Egypt, but what we learned from there, the basis of our religion. Why are we religious? And Rashbi says we would have thought we don't introduce questions why we're religious until the child asks it. We don't rock the boat. An old Haimisha approach. Don't rock the boat. And the pasuk says, well, I guess normally sometimes you don't rock the boat, but the night of Pesach, we are actually supposed to rock the boat. And that brings me to what we'll be talking about on Sunday. In the meantime, have a great evening and a beautiful Shabbos.
Thanks, Rabbi.